In the highest room of a shining glass tower, a $40 million deal was moments from collapse, until an unexpected voice stepped forward. Not a lawyer, not an executive, but a 14-year-old boy waiting for his mother to finish work. What happened next would leave a room full of powerful people in stunned silence, and the world watching in awe. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us where you are watching from. If this story moved you, we'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below and let us know what you think. Now, let's jump into the story. In the city of San Francisco, where the evening sun turned the skyline gold, the Aurora Tower stood like a pillar of ambition. On its highest floor, the offices of the Solvast Group buzzed with quiet intensity. Behind glass walls and polished tables, a meeting was about to decide the future of the company. It was no ordinary deal. The Solvast Group had been working for months to secure an agreement with an influential investment consortium from Dubai. The value was $40 million. This deal was more than numbers on paper. It was a gateway into the Middle Eastern market, a chance to expand across borders, and a move that could redefine the company's strategy for years to come. Inside the boardroom, the atmosphere was heavy with focus. Lawyers adjusted their papers, directors exchanged low words, and translators prepared for their part in the process. Every seat was filled with someone essential: finance experts, cultural advisors, legal teams, and representatives from both sides. They knew the weight of the evening. One mistake could slow months of progress. One wrong word could shift trust in the wrong direction. Outside that circle of power, life went on as usual for Martha Levin. She was a cleaner in the building, moving quietly through the hallways in her dark uniform. She had been working at Aurora Tower for years, and though she was far from the meetings and deals, she had learned to read the air of the building. She could sense when something important was happening. That night, she felt it in the way the staff walked a little faster, the way voices in the hall fell to whispers. Martha was not alone. Waiting in the lounge nearby was her 14-year-old son, Lucas. He sat on a bench by the large glass windows, the city lights stretching out behind him. He had a small sketch pad in his hands, filled not with drawings, but with lists of words. Lucas loved languages. Since he was a child, he collected new words, like other children collected coins or stamps. English, Arabic, Spanish, Mandarin, Italian. He spoke them all with surprising skill. This love for languages had come from his late father, a cultural historian who had once told him that words were more than tools for speaking. They were keys to understanding people, their thoughts, and their traditions. His father believed that learning a language was an act of respect, a way of reaching out across the world. Lucas carried that belief with him every day. He had no idea that on this evening, in this building, those words from his father would soon take on a meaning he could never have imagined. The deal in the boardroom was entering its most important stage. Papers had been reviewed, points had been discussed, and now it was time for the final round of negotiations before the signing. The lead interpreter prepared to manage the conversation, switching between English and Arabic to keep both sides aligned. The city outside glowed under the last light of the day, but inside, the room's energy was tense and focused. This was the moment that could shape the Solvast Group's future. Everyone was aware that the smallest error, whether in language, timing, or tone, could cause the entire effort to collapse. Lucas, sitting just outside, could hear only fragments of the conversation. He didn't know the details, but he understood enough of the words to follow the flow. He could tell when voices rose in energy or slowed in doubt. Without realizing it, He leaned forward in his seat, his attention fixed on the sound of languages blending and shifting beyond the glass doors. And somewhere deep inside, something told him this night was going to be different. The meeting inside the boardroom had moved into a delicate stage. Both the Solvas Group and the Dubai Consortium had presented their final positions. Numbers were discussed, terms were adjusted, and cultural points were being clarified to avoid misunderstandings. The lead interpreter, a seasoned professional, guided the conversation smoothly, switching between English and Arabic without hesitation. Every word mattered. Lucas sat in the lounge, still flipping through his sketchpad. The hum of voices carried through the glass. He caught words and phrases in both languages, noticing the care with which they were chosen. He could feel the weight of each sentence, even without knowing the full details of the deal. Then, without warning, the rhythm broke. The interpreter's voice faltered mid-sentence. A pause followed, longer than any before. Chairs shifted. Papers rustled. Someone asked a question in Arabic, but no answer came. Martha, cleaning near the hallway, glanced toward the boardroom. She saw a group of people rising from their seats. One of the executives moved quickly toward the door, calling for help. The interpreter had collapsed at the table. Medics arrived within minutes, their voices calm but firm as they checked his condition. It became clear that he would not be able to continue. The chair at the head of the table sat empty, and so did the vital role he had been playing. The room changed instantly. Where there had been steady conversation, there was now uncertainty. The Dubai representatives leaned toward one another, speaking in low voices. A few of them glanced at their watches. One man stood and began pacing near the window. Time was not their friend. The deal had taken months to prepare, and trust had been built carefully. A delay now risked undoing all that work. In high-level negotiations, even a short pause can raise doubts. Lucas noticed the shift. Though he could only see through the glass, he read it in their body language, the hesitation, the guarded looks. He understood enough Arabic to catch hints of their concern. Some worried that the lack of a translator showed poor organization. Others seemed ready to call it a night. Inside, the executives of the Solvas Group spoke urgently. They needed a replacement interpreter, but finding one who could arrive quickly, handle complex financial terms, and earn the confidence of both sides was nearly impossible on such short notice. Martha stayed at her post, unsure of what to do, but sensing the gravity of the situation. She looked at her son, still seated quietly in the lounge, eyes fixed on the boardroom. He wasn't fidgeting or distracted. Instead, he was listening with intense focus, as if the moment belonged to him in some unspoken way. Lucas's mind was working faster than his hands could turn the pages of his sketchpad. He thought about the flow of the conversation, the meaning behind certain phrases, and the small misunderstandings that can grow into bigger ones if left unaddressed. He had learned from his father that language was more than words. It was tone, timing, and respect. He could see those threads starting to fray inside the room. The minutes dragged on. The Dubai delegation spoke more in Arabic now, without translation. Their expressions hardened. One of them gathered his papers. Another checked his phone. Lucas knew that once they walked out, the opportunity would be gone. And though no one had asked him, though he was just a boy waiting for his mother to finish work, a quiet thought formed in his mind. He could help, but stepping forward meant crossing a line. It meant entering a room where he did not belong, speaking for people who carried more years and titles than he could imagine. It meant taking a risk, not just for himself, but for everyone in that tower. As the silence in the boardroom grew heavier, Lucas's decision began to take shape. Something was about to happen. Lucas sat still for another moment, listening to the fragments of conversation coming from the boardroom. The longer he listened, the more certain he became. The silence had settled into the kind of quiet that breaks deals. The Dubai representatives spoke only to one another now, and the Solvist Group executives kept exchanging uneasy glances. The flow of trust was slipping away. He took a deep breath. Without looking at his mother, he stood and walked toward the glass doors. Martha noticed him and called softly after him. But Lucas didn't stop. His steps were steady, his mind focused. When he reached the door, he waited until one of the assistants noticed him. "I can help," he said, his voice calm but firm. There was a moment of surprise, then disbelief. A teenager offering to interpret a high-stakes $40 million deal. It sounded impossible. One of the executives gave a polite shake of the head, but Lucas didn't move away. He looked directly at the lead negotiator and repeated himself. "I speak English and Arabic. I can help you finish." Something in his tone, quiet, measured, and certain, made the negotiator pause. After a glance at the Dubai representatives, the decision was made. They had nothing to lose. Lucas stepped into the boardroom, sketchpad still in hand. The chair beside the empty interpreter's seat was pulled out for him. He sat down, adjusted the microphone, and began. His first words in Arabic drew the attention of the Dubai delegation. The pronunciation was clean, the rhythm natural. He did not rush. He delivered each phrase with clarity, then turned to the Solvast Group and translated back into English with equal precision. But Lucas did more than match words. He mirrored tone. When one side spoke firmly, he kept the firmness but softened the edges so it would not be taken as offense. When they made a joke, he carried the lightness of it across languages so both sides could share the moment. He understood cultural references that might have been missed and explained them quickly without slowing the pace. For 40 minutes, the tension in the room slowly shifted. Shoulders eased. Eyes met again across the table. Questions were answered without hesitation, and the back and forth became natural, almost like a conversation between friends rather than business rivals. Lucas remembered his father's lessons about respect, how a single respectful phrase can open a door, and how a small misunderstanding can close it. He used those lessons now, choosing words that would keep both sides aligned. The Dubai representatives began to lean in, listening more closely, speaking more freely. The Solvast team regained their confidence. The conversation moved from cautious negotiation to final agreement. Martha, still standing in the hallway, could see her son through the glass. She had always known he was gifted with languages, but she had never seen him like this, focused, professional, and completely at ease in a room full of powerful adults. By the time the last document was reviewed, the change in the atmosphere was undeniable. The delegates smiled. Pens moved across paper. The signatures were made. The deal was done. Lucas set down his pen and leaned back slightly, not with pride, but with quiet relief. He knew he had done what he came to do. No applause came in that moment, no immediate celebration. Instead, there was a respectful nod from the lead negotiator and a soft thank you from the Dubai delegation. He stood, closed his sketchpad, and walked back toward the lounge. The city lights glowed brighter now, reflecting on the glass walls of the tower. The night had shifted, not just for the Solvist Group, but for him. He had stepped into a space where few believed he belonged, and he had proven, without raising his voice, that courage does not need volume to be heard. The meeting room slowly emptied. Handshakes were exchanged, brief smiles shared, and the final documents were placed neatly into leather folders. The Solvis Group executives knew the weight of what had just happened. Without that last stretch of clear communication, the $40 million agreement might have slipped away forever. As Lucas stepped back into the hallway, the cool air of the lounge felt different. Martha was waiting for him, her eyes full of both relief and pride. She didn't say much, just rested a hand on his shoulder. They stood for a moment, side by side, watching the boardroom lights fade as the doors closed. One of the assistants who had been in the room was still holding his phone. Without planning to, he had recorded most of Lucas's time at the table. He replayed a short clip, shaking his head in disbelief. The clarity of the translation, the calm tone, the way Lucas carried himself, it was something remarkable. By the time they left the building, that short video had already been sent to a few friends. By the next morning, it had spread far beyond the Aurora Tower. Social media picked it up first, with captions calling Lucas the boy who bridged worlds. And the young voice that sealed a $40 million deal. News outlets began asking for interviews. Headlines appeared online, each telling the story in their own way, but all pointing to the same truth. This was not just about a boy who knew 5 languages. It was about someone who stepped forward in a moment when no one expected him to, and turned a failing situation into a success. Messages began arriving from universities, language institutes, and cultural organizations around the world. Some offered scholarships. Others wanted to invite Lucas to speak about his experience. Broadcasters requested to feature him in television segments. But in the middle of all the attention, Lucas stayed quiet. He went to school as usual, kept working in his sketchpad, and spent his evenings much the same as before. Martha noticed how little the sudden fame seemed to change him. He didn't talk about the offers or the attention unless someone asked. To him, what happened that night wasn't about becoming a public figure. It was about helping when help was needed. Weeks later, Lucas was invited to speak at a local cultural forum. He stood at the front of a small stage, looking out at students, teachers, and community members. He didn't talk much about the deal or the money. Instead, he spoke about something his father had told him when he was younger, that every language you learn is like holding a key. Some keys open doors to friendships. Others open doors to understanding. And some, if you're lucky, can open doors to peace between people who might never have met. He told them that anyone could collect these keys, no matter where they came from or what job their parents did. It took time, patience, and curiosity, but each key had the power to change a moment or even a life. As the audience listened, it became clear that Lucas's story was not just about a single night in a tall glass building. It was about the quiet courage to act when the moment calls for it. And it was about believing that even the smallest voice can carry across a room, and sometimes across the world. When he left the forum that evening, Lucas walked out into the cool night air. The city lights shimmered on the streets, just as they had on the night of the deal. He looked at them for a long moment, then smiled. He knew there would be other moments, other doors, and other keys to find. The story that had started in the Aurora Tower was only the beginning.